So this part of your Kin 425 lecture for Wednesday, February 10th, I'm going to be going over this crossword puzzle and walking you through the solutions for this crossword puzzle. So this is a cardiovascular system review. So the one across asks, this is determined by dividing stroke volume by your end diastolic volume. This should be your ejection fraction. Ejection fraction. The three across, this can be determined by either the difference between end diastolic volume and end systolic volume, or by dividing cardiac output by heart rate. This would be your stroke volume. The six across, this is determined by the product of cardiac output and total peripheral resistance. This is your blood pressure. The seven across, this would increase if the heart was working harder. So this is a long one, but this would be your myocardial oxygen consumption. So your heart starts to consume more oxygen if it's working harder, just like a skeletal muscle consumes more oxygen if it's working harder. So this is a long answer here, but it's myocardial oxygen consumption. And you can see how that fits in there. Myocardial oxygen consumption. The next one is liters of blood pumped by the heart per minute. That describes cardiac output. The nine across, these small vessels originate from the aorta. This would be your coronary arteries. So those feed oxygen to your heart. So the blood is leaving your left ventricle through the aorta, and then these coronary arteries branch off of the aorta to go back to the heart to feed oxygen to the heart, just like it's as if it's a skeletal muscle, or just like it's a muscle and it needs oxygen. It needs to consume oxygen to work. Um, 11 across, this describes the only vein that has a high oxygen content. This would be your pulmonary vein. So it's coming from the lungs and going to the heart. It's going to the left side of the heart. And because it's coming from the lungs, it's high in oxygen. 12 across, this ion crosses the sarcolemma during contraction of cardiac cells, but not muscle cells. So this is something that I just discussed. It's the calcium. Thirteen across, constriction or dilation of these blood vessels has the greatest influence on total peripheral resistance. This would be your arterioles. The one down, this describes the volume of blood that is left in the heart after contraction. This would be your end systolic volume. The two down, this term is used to describe percentage of red blood cells. This would be your hematocrit. Four down, an increase in blood flow to the liver would allow lactate to be disposed of through this metabolic pathway. This would be gluconeogenesis. So as I mentioned, a trained individual would get greater blood flow to the liver during submaximal exercise. This allows for greater gluconeogenesis and greater removal of lactate. The reason a trained individual has a greater blood flow to the liver during exercise is because they have a lower amount of catecholamines that are released because they're less stressed than an untrained individual. So they have less epinephrine, norepinephrine released, and those hormones act to increase vasoconstriction. So you have less vasoconstriction if you're trained. You have greater blood flow to the liver and greater capacity for removal of lactate. 5 down, blood is pumped from here to the pulmonary circuit. This would be the right ventricle. And the last one, 10 down, this is the main blood vessel through which blood leaves the left ventricle. This would be your aorta. So that is the solution to your crossword puzzle.